Welcome into the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So, on last week's episode, I said that winter would be making a comeback in a big way, and it sure did. Since that episode, we've had two snowstorms with a decent Arctic blast in between. And winter's triumphant return is not over quite yet. We have one more snowstorm to go in this current active pattern. So our next storm, and it looks to be a pretty big one, will kick off on Friday night and last through Saturday night. It's another 24-hour event, really. There will be two lows again with this system, just like the last storm we had. There'll be one low that tracks to our north with a low developing along the coast. And again, that will set up colder air across at least northern New England. Right now, the coastal low does appear that it will track more inland, and that will allow some mixing and more mild air into southern New England. Now, whenever you have these two lows, the forecast is always a little more uncertain, like it was last week. It took a little while to get enough confidence to put out a snowfall map, and the same is true with this storm. So again, there will likely be mixing across southern New England. Really, I-90 south, I-90 kind of cuts a path through Massachusetts. South of there, we'll see much lower amounts, likely with potentially pretty significant amounts north of I-90. Areas north of I-90 could see upwards of 6 inches at least, and there are indications that some areas could see a foot plus as you get into central and northern New Hampshire. It looks like the amounts do taper off as you get into Maine once again. And just like the storm that just hit, there will likely be some elevation enhancements going on. So that will allow the Berkshires of Massachusetts up into the Green Mountains of Vermont will also likely get into some higher amounts. But again, generally, it will be I-90 north, so northern Massachusetts up toward the White Mountains of New Hampshire will likely be seeing the highest amounts. Again, as you get down south of I-90 and then, of course, over into eastern Massachusetts, again, we're trending toward there's going to be some mixing and rain going on, so that will of course keep the amounts lower there. Like right now, Boston's looking at maybe 1 to 3 inches, Providence a couple inches maybe, and then of course again it looks like I-90 is going to be the separation between where there's going to be some potential mixing and lower amounts, and where it's going to be all snow up further north. So again, to recap the snow amounts, we are looking at 6+ inches from northern Massachusetts up through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, much of Vermont, except, of course, for northwest Vermont, again, just like our last storm, northwest Vermont, and then as you get into eastern Maine, the amounts will taper off, as again, you're getting further away from the center of the systems. And we can't rule out 12+ inches of snow for the jackpot areas. The jackpot area looks like it'll be central New Hampshire, like Lake Winnipesaukee through the White Mountains could see a foot plus of snow from this system. So this storm is helping us kick off meteorological spring. Yes, that is here. Today is the day. Happy Meteorological Spring Day. Of course, March 1st is the first day of meteorological spring. So happy spring, or sad spring, depending on whether you are a lover of the cold weather or a lover of the warm weather. So by the end of this month, we will be seeing sunsets after 7 p.m. This is the time of year where you really, really start noticing, wow, the sun is staying out later. Like, it's not really just starting to get dark until, 5:45, 5:50. So by the end of this month, we will be after 7 p.m. And again, it is meteorological spring. So for you lovers of cold, yes, it is still winter. It's going to be winter. It's going to be officially winter for a few more weeks as the vernal equinox does not occur until March 20th. So, might be meteorological spring, but it is still going to feel like winter. We are looking at a rather cold March. It is looking like we are going to see some persistent below average temperatures throughout much of March as a Greenland blocking high has set up. It's not very strong yet, but it is growing stronger. When you have this Greenland blocking high, it allows colder air to filter right into the northeastern United States, really the entire northern tier of the United States. And this Greenland blocking high will be getting stronger and stronger as over at least the next couple weeks. So, and this will produce, as I lose my train of thought for a second, this will produce. Well, I'm switching between graphics, but I'm here now. So this will produce uh, persistent cooler than average temperatures. We are looking at below average temperatures in the NOAA outlook for March 6th to the 10th. It even maybe gets a little more confident of cooler temperatures for the second week in for the second week in March, March 8th to the 14th. And it's actually a kind of a role reversal from what we've been seeing. Southern New England currently has a higher chance of being below average than as you get up into northern Maine. And even the 3 to 4 week outlook shows potentially even stronger indications of below average temperatures. Again, that would take us through March 24th, and the overall outlook, again, of course, with all three of those looking below average, the entire month is looking below average. The 3 month outlook, which I don't really pay much attention to, but I'll throw it out there, is still looking slightly above average. But again, I don't really, I very rarely bring that up. I don't really like to bring up the 3 to 4 week outlook either, just because that's getting so far out. But with this Greenland blocking high, there is a greater uh, certainty of potentially below average conditions occurring. Of course, as I always like to say, that again is the overview. Not every single day in March is going to be below average. It's not going to be in the 30s, in the 40s, every single day until March 31st. That is just the general look. I'm sure there will be spring-like days in there. It's actually next week the temperatures have trended up slightly to a bit more seasonable. Again, that Greenland blocking high is going to get stronger as time goes on at this point. But again, looking at seasonable, but maybe a little below average for next week with persistent below average temperatures for the rest of the month with, again, there'll be spring-like days sandwiched in there as well. And now that it is spring and March, we are once again bringing back the Resort Roundup. So if you don't know what the Resort Roundup is, basically we watch a handful of ski resorts and areas all across New England. We will be monitoring them and we will be watching out for when their closing dates for winter sports will be this year. We will be watching 42 resorts. Again, these 42 resorts, we have at least one in all 6 states, and they range from very tiny ski hills to the region's biggest resorts. The Resort Roundup will update once a week. Every Monday, I will have a status update as well as a table showing the resorts that have closed. There will also be a map showing the resorts that are still open. This will continue every single Monday from now on, right up through when Killington closes for winter sports. We all know, of course, Killington will be open, the latest, of course. So again, we will have daily status, or not daily, weekly status updates on skiing in New England every Monday throughout March, throughout April, probably throughout May, and right up until Killington closes. Who knows when that's going to be? Maybe it'll be late May, maybe it'll be mid-June. Who knows? But we will keep this going right up until they call it for winter sports for this season. So that is going to do it for this edition of Weather Wednesdays. So as always, keep it right here. Keep it on NewEnglandStormCenter.com for everything New England weather. And you'll hear from me again next Wednesday.